to kick things off, I want to talk about chaos and complexity. It seems to be increasing lately in capital markets. And what I've heard from you is you describe your investment philosophy through the lens of anti-entropic. I'd like to understand more about what that means for you.
Yeah, so we're thinking about, have been thinking for a long time about how both de-globalization and technology are changing the world. And I think it's sort of when I was a young person, I was with your dad at Goldman, it was globalization, technology, two currents of our time. Now it's de-globalization. And they are creating increasing levels of chaos. You add that plus the other issues we deal with, whether it's change in the environment, change in the climate, population movements, demographics, the way people are acting, all of this is adding up to more chaos in the world. That is our view. And so we've been thinking about what that means, and we look for companies that we call our pro-entropic. They're actually good at chaos. And usually they're led by people that are also good at chaos. And people that are good at chaos are people that really think about the world probabilistically and set their strategies in a way that almost no matter what you can imagine happen, the company still does well.
Sure. That makes a ton of sense. And one of the core differentiating value propositions of Valor, as I understand it, is really deep operational expertise. I mean, I'd love to kind of go back in time a bit to your private equity days, buying and optimizing manufacturing businesses. Tell us more about that, how that has informed your venture and growth equity approaches, and a bit about what you do for companies.
Yes, this is way back. This is almost 30 years, right? 25 plus years. I started out really buying one little company at a time. I wouldn't call it private equity. I'd call it kind of like fundless sponsor time, right? And so I bought a little business that plated connector parts, and had a guy running it. And I was my background is at Goldman Sachs. Didn't know what to do. I had a problem with this guy running it. Had to fix it. And so I moved to California from Chicago, where I was living at the time, and went to LA to actually start running this little company that had a 10,000 square foot factory probably, and about 70, 80 people running in it, and try to run that business. That's how I started on operations. I was on a factory floor in a plating factory. And it's not very glamorous, but it's a great place to learn. And really what I learned there is what we call the theory of constraints, which is how a closed system operates and what is the limiter of capacity in that closed system. Sure. That's the beginning of us thinking about what led to later chaos theory and investments. But over time, as we added people and I had partners join and our business got bigger, that really turned into lean, which is what we apply today. And we have picked up these operating capabilities over the years to help our companies scale. What we learned in the old days when we were running little operating companies and little manufacturing businesses was that, as you grow, things break. And we wanted to become experts in helping companies get over those humps. You grow, plateau, something breaks, you grow, plateau, something breaks. We want to be really the best in the world at if you want a partner that helps you get through that scale point, that break point, we're the people you call. And we built our brand around that and all of our capacity around that.
Got it. Makes sense. So, early in your career, you took two significant non-consensus bets in Elon Musk, in both Tesla and SpaceX.
Yeah.
Tell us more about those two journeys. It's been a long road, capital-intensive businesses, heavy ops businesses. You've been in the trenches alongside Elon for a long time. Tell us about that.
Yeah, they're really separate decisions. We invested in PayPal in 99, 2000, somewhere back then. It's so long ago, I can't remember the exact year. And that's how I first got to know Elon. And then we invested in Tesla really because we were thinking about energy independence, the energy supply chain. And in the same fund we invested in Tesla, we actually invested in natural gas fracking assets. Believe it or not, yes, it's true. And so today we're talking about energy independence in America. We were thinking about it back in the early 2000s as well because we were coming off the Gulf War. Yeah. And it became clear to us that America had, at that point, technology and fracking was changing, and America had the ability to become energy independent in two ways. One was through an electric future that was built in alternative energy, and the other was through a bridge using natural gas coming out of the oil fields. When Elon first talked to us about Tesla, it was really going to be a friends and family investment we were making outside the fund, and our advisory board asked us to put it in the fund. Huh. We did it because my partner Tim Watkins and I did the diligence, and we identified that the gestalt between the motor, the software, the battery pack, that technology package was very special. Any one piece could be seen somewhere else. It was special software, but you could build it, you could find how to build it, right? It was really how the team had put it together that was so special. And then energy storage was going to be a very, very important part of our clean energy future.
Yep.
That's when we made the first investment. And the original thesis in the company, if people remember, was never what you see today. This was really because Elon's so pro-anthropic, right? We were able to acquire the factory in Fremont during the Great Financial Crisis at a very low cost, was always to be Intel inside, to sell drivetrains, battery packs, and software to other manufacturers, and then ultimately build the storage business, which we're building today. Yep. That was the original thesis. And you've seen that play out. Along the way, we were able to actually really go into the manufacturing business, making cars, and that's another part of the story. But it was about that first decision around the storage technology. Yep. And remember, Elon was running the company at the time. Later, we doubled down our bet, and we continued to invest further in 08, 09. It was really about him because he was then the CEO. Yep. And we were backing him to fix the company and get through the financial crisis and come to the other side.
Yep.
SpaceX was a bit of a different matter. No, SpaceX really was a deep dive into understanding the technology and believing that Elon could pull it off, and he had engineers that could pull it off. He's very, very talented engineers there, even in the very, very beginning. And they had some of the smartest people we ever met. We were super impressed with the team. And when you think about that industry structure, it is a global oligopoly that has very, very high margin and is extremely inefficient. Yep. So as manufacturing guys, we could think about and easily ideate with the team there what it would look like to disrupt them. And so to us, it seemed a lot less impossible than it might to others.
Sure. I mean, back when I was at Tesla for a brief time in 2013, 2014, so a handful of years after the IPO, they had the Model S, which was an astonishing achievement of engineering. 70% of the sales at the time were just in the state of California. Yep. But the big vision, the master plan was, hey, we need to bring a commercial level car to scale at a low cost. Can you describe to us, I've heard you tell me that the Model 3 and building and scaling that production line and building, as Elon would say, the machine that builds the machine was among the proudest moments of your career. I'd love to learn more about that time, more about some lessons you learned.
Yeah, people say never start a land war. In Asia, I would say never try to ramp an auto factory without any money. That was not a good idea. Generally a bad idea. But it was extraordinary because we had a view toward automation at Tesla at that time that was really heavily automated on the front of the production line. And when we went to ramp the factory, it was just, I think, too difficult to ramp all that serially related automation at the same time. You sort of multiply probably of every cell. And so, we found ourselves in a situation where the factory was taking longer to ramp than we could afford. We didn't have the working capital to get through it. And I'll never forget, I got a call from Elon early in the summer in 2018, and he said, hey, can you send me Tim Watkins? And Tim Watkins is our senior operating partner, genius, master robotics, genius engineer, lean master guru. Yep. And I said, hey, Elon, I'm really sorry, but Tim's parents are sick, and he's in Europe, and he's taking the summer to go see his parents, who are older and very ill. But I will come. And that was like the second right behind, don't ramp an auto factory with no money, don't volunteer to take a job Tim Watkins should take. Sure. So I ended up going there and helping instead. And it really was an amazing experience because we found ourselves sort of building older school manufacturing lines, in the tent, this kind of very linear, lean.
In the parking lot.
In the parking lot. Yeah. This is very old school. Building very, very old school, simple lines to begin the production, to start ramping as the rest of the factory was coming up behind it. And it was extremely difficult. It was existential for the company because we were running out of money. And I'm very proud of that time because we have an amazing, amazing team at Tesla. I mean, there are thousands of people working on this. You sort of see Elon as the face of the company, but there are thousands of people working there. And they worked extremely hard because they believed in the mission that we were changing the world. We're ramping an auto factory, that's true, but we were ramping an auto factory that's product was going to change the world. And I'm just honored to have worked next to them. I'm honored to work next to Elon and step in the competition with him, and I'm honored to have worked next to these amazing people at Tesla who gave so much of their time, energy, and really life's energy, their chi, to make that happen. And it was exceptional. It was an exceptional moment for me. Yeah,
and I really felt that when I was there. The sum of all vectors going straight to Mars or going straight to a sustainable future was really palpable during that time. So, I mean, you guys are investing in tons of other categories. Initially started in private equity, moved to growth, also doing a ton of early stage. And at the firm, you describe your early stage investments as R&D investments. You're making a bunch of small bets. At that stage, what are you looking for? Are there any unifying heuristics that you use at the earliest stages?
Yeah, we are looking for businesses that first fundamentally are making the world better. That's very important to us. And then we're looking for companies that have the ability to do what we call proentropic. They kind of get better in any environment because their products are truly disruptive, or their demand functions are kind of independent of the consumer economy, the cyclical economy. So, things like Anduril, things that might be more related to defense technology, or, things that are related to sustainability. We have a great company called Tomorrow Farms we're doing with you. And it's, these kinds of businesses are disrupting. They're fundamentally applying technology to make the world better. In this case, the food supply, the milk supply better, cheaper and better. Yep. And in that, for us, is why we're here. Yep. And so we're looking for early stage companies that we can get to know, build a relationship. They get to know us. We write, $1, $3, $5 million checks. Then we scale those checks later in the growth fund.
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect segue. I mean, so you and your partner, John Shulkin, as well as the rest of the team, recently raised about a $600 million fund in collaboration with Starbucks, Nestle, and a handful of others to invest in food technology. Can you give us a sense of where you're looking in that arena now?
So this is our second fund in the area. We did our first fund with Starbucks and Nestle and a few other corporate partners a few years back. And we are looking in, I'd say, sustainability writ large in food tech and retail tech. And so the company we share with you is an example of this, where you're really leaning in to try to figure out how to make milk better, right? Make it the basic inputs of milk better, and make them cheaper and scale it for more people. Definitely. This is a huge problem globally, right? Here in this country, we see food inflation already, but even before food inflation, we have lots of calories in this country, not lots of nutrition.
Sure.
And so if you come from a wealthy household, you probably have good nutrition, but across the spectrum, we've mastered the idea of making something a cheap calorie, but not necessarily nutritious and cheap calorie.
Sure.
And I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves here in the first world, and really, in poorer countries, also how we feed all the people. I mean, that is a problem we will deal with more as the climate continues to change, and we have to just accept this as true. As much as I wish climate change wasn't happening, and it wasn't going to affect our global food supply, it is happening, and it will affect our global food supply, and it will impact the people that are most vulnerable first. Yep. And so the work you are doing and the work we are doing together is extremely important, because we need to find a way to feed these people.
I appreciate that. And switching topics a bit, I mean, you are a voraciously curious person, someone that has become a real student of neuroscience. Mm-hmm. And you've made a number of hires at the firm, which I have found to be incredibly unique, including professors of neuroscience from USC and Caltech and others. Can you tell us more about that? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah. I'm in a relentless pursuit to understand why I make bad decisions.
Sure.
And I've been trying to get better at making good decisions, and one way to get better at making good decisions is make less bad ones.
Yep.
So I started with the question of, it's very interesting, I started with the question of, like, in the same fund, we invested in Tesla Motors. We invested in a company that ended up being a Medicaid fraud. Okay. And I'm asking myself this question of, how can the same brain make those two decisions in the same 12-month period? Sure. Right? And as I got into the question, I really went to first principles. And first principles is the structure of the brain. It is the hardware to the software of psychology. And I figured out very quickly, I don't really understand what's between my ears. This 3.5-pound thing that pulls 20 watts of power a day, that makes my body and makes me, and is the source of my consciousness, and then makes some of my decisions. I don't really understand how it functions and why it functions. And I was lucky enough to find some great thought partners. You mentioned Laura and Galen.
That's right.
That would help us understand this. And as we got into it, we realized that this is really a hardware and software integration between the brain and its programming. And if you want to understand how you make decisions, you really have to begin with understanding how the neural network system of the brain actually works. That is what we're trying to teach our own people today. It's formed the suite of, I'd say, a coaching and training methodology that we're using internally and externally with some of our CEOs. And we believe it's going to be useful.
Yep. Yes. And is the goal in some ways to try and both identify and strip away all of the myriad of biases in particular? Or,
Yes, that is one of the things we think about carefully, which is, what is the source of human bias in thinking? So that if you make an error, because you either have bad inputs, i.e. if the brain's a neural network, your training data is bad, it's either mislabeled or wrong.
Yep.
And or your algorithm is operating with a bias that you don't understand or see.
Sure.
And so part of this was digging into the idea of what is the nature of bias, and in our thinking we identify 3 kinds of bias. One is cognitive bias, well studied by Conor Tversky, that won Nobel Prizes for this. The other is emotional bias, not so well studied, but we know we have it. We know when you get an adrenaline spike when something annoys you and you make a bad decision because you can't think properly when that's happening to you.
Yep.
And the third is belief bias, less well studied. There are beliefs we all hold in our system, and I think Tesla's a good example of this. We've invested in Tesla. There was a belief in America that you can't make things in America. Can't be done. Think about back in 2005, 7, 8, 10. If you said to someone, I'm going to make a car, I'm going to open an auto factory in California, they would have thought you had lost your mind.
Sure.
I mean, literally lost your mind. Or we're going to make rockets in California, lost your mind. The reality is that was a belief that is wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. And it's one of the reasons this country has gotten in trouble now with its supply chains, why we are scrambling at a policy level to undo all the outsourcing we've done in the last 30 years.
Sure.
The reason that we have all this stuff offshore is because of a currency manipulation, frankly. We can make stuff in America. And it's a very obvious example. Like, that is a belief that just simply is not true. And there are many beliefs like this that we go walk the world with, that we don't re-examine. When you go to first principles and you re-examine them, you see they create real errors in thinking.
Yeah, it's a great segue. I mean, with China in particular rising as sort of a preeminent economic and technological superpower, most consumer electronics are made in and around Shenzhen or Shanghai. Do you see a path where we can truly bring manufacturing back to the United States at every level, not just cars or rockets, but other things as well?
I do. I mean, I think we have to consider our industrial policy carefully. We have the first step of it with this. I can't even say it. Inflation Reduction Act. It's hard to even say that out loud.
Sure.
Let's say Inflation Act.
Yeah.
Dot. Yeah. It's yes. We absolutely can. Now, do we want it all back? No. Listen, we don't. I would not ever recommend that we undo the global trade system. It's been a very powerful engine of growth globally. It's been great for America, great for many of our trade partners. But strategic industries, we should be able to make this stuff here in the U.S. at a level at which we can scale if needed. If there is supply chain disruption for whatever reason, COVID, war, whatever might happen in the world, we should be in a position strategically where we can actually increase production because we have enough here that we have enough built here that we're doing copy repeat.
Sure.
We're not actually trying to design the thing. We're just trying to copy the thing we've already designed and built. And I think it behooves all of us. We should all pay a little more for an iPhone to make sure that all made by Foxconn in China.
Yep.
I mean, that's an intelligent thing to do. And look, we're paying for it anyway because now we have inflation.
Yep.
And we'd probably have less inflation if we didn't have the supply chain problems we have today. So I think it is possible. I think it's something we should do. I think I'm very happy that policymakers are thinking about it finally. And there are other industries. Look, the only cells made in this country at the moment are made by Tesla, basically, and Panasonic. That's going to change. Obviously, in biotechnology business you're in,
Sure.
I mean, we don't make a lot of pharma in the U.S., right? Yep. I mean, that's the reality of it at scale. In addition to the obvious chips and other things we're talking about, but there's a lot of industries that we should have at least a basic level of production here in the U.S. for sure.
Yeah, and as my final question, something I've really noticed and felt in my interactions with you and many of the members of your team is there's a real camaraderie there, and there's a real culture and value system. And I know you have spent so much time meticulously building those values over many decades.
Yeah.
Love to understand what those values are and how you've managed to really travel this journey with some phenomenal people along the way.
Yeah, I feel extremely grateful to have some partners with me for 20 plus years. Yeah. We've been together for a long time, and I think our values, and thank you for asking this question actually, I think our values really have helped bind us through the ups and the downs. There's been lots of ups and downs. I mean, I don't know, this is our 5th economic cycle together, and we've grown a lot together. We've grown as humans together. And our values are humility, integrity, responsibility, and excellence. We sat down together when we raised our first fund and wrote them down, and we put them on the wall, actually. There's a poster with these values in every Valor conference room and across every office in the country we have. And it binds our fellowship. We have a sense of camaraderie, as you say. We call it a fellowship. And we share these values, we interview for them, we hire for them, and actually we coach people out who don't hold them because we believe in them. And when at the top of the cycle, they remind you that you're never quite as good as you think you are. And your partners remind you that as well at times. At the bottom of the cycle, they remind you that you are together.
Yep.
and together you will succeed. That is what's kept the firm together. And I think about now, I'm at a stage where I'm thinking about succession. You know, like I'm not going to work for a long time, but I want to think about that. I want the firm to survive me. And the amazing young people bringing in, I find they come because they believe in these values too.
Yeah.
And they believe in our mission to help make the world better. And the last thing I'll tell you is we have in our firm an ethos of servant leadership. You know, we do a lot of work at our companies, and my partner Tim says, you know, we lead by the side door. We enter by the side door and lead by the side door, which is try not to take credit, right? We try to really serve and behave like servant leaders. This is important because it's never really about us. We operationalize the idea of making the world better through other people, through helping other people. And so we have to have an ethos of service with our companies, with our investors, and with each other. That's what I think binds the whole thing together.
Definitely. I think that's the perfect way to close with that. Antonio Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.